Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something you probably do dozens, maybe hundreds of times a day without a second thought: walking. But we're not just talking about walking, we're diving deep into the speed of your walk. It sounds almost, well, mundane, right? But this one measure is rapidly becoming one of the most revealing signs of human health that we have.
It's absolutely foundational, and clinicians are now calling it, the quiet vital sign.
The quiet vital sign, I like that.
Yeah, because we're all trained to notice things like blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, but we often completely overlook this really visible sign of how everything is working together.
And why quiet?
Well, because we notice the big things: a stumble, a fall. We rarely, if ever, notice a gradual slowdown over, say, a few months or a year. And that slowdown, that's the real signal.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to unpack why this ridiculously simple metric, it's just distance over time, can predict everything from your risk after major surgery to how long a crosswalk light stays green.
Right. And what it can tell you about your own health.
Let's start with what it's actually measuring. You called it a systems check before we started.
Yeah, that's really the best way to think about it. On the surface, it's simple. But walking well compresses so much information. It's an incredible test of collaboration between the body's essential systems.
So it's not just about leg strength.
Not at all. Think about what it takes to walk efficiently. First, you need your heart and lungs. They have to deliver oxygen to your muscles.
Okay, that makes sense. The engine.
Right. Then you need the muscles themselves to generate force. Power, really, not just brute strength. Third, your joints have to move freely, without pain or stiffness.
And what's the last piece?
The nervous system. It's a coordinator. It's managing timing, balance, sensory feedback, all the tiny adjustments that keep you upright and moving forward without you even thinking about it.
So it's a full-body functional assessment every time you walk across a room.
Exactly. And here's the critical takeaway. When any one of those systems, maybe it's subtle heart failure, early arthritis, even tiny neurological changes, when any of them start to falter, your walking speed is often the very first thing to change.
So it's the canary in the coal mine.
It really is. It can decline years before a clear disability or a specific diagnosis ever shows up. It's the check engine light coming on while all the individual gauges still look okay.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. So now that we know what it measures, let's get into the hard numbers. What's a typical speed?
For most adults living out in the community, the average is right around 1.9 miles per hour.
1.9.
Yeah. And for healthier, maybe younger adults, you might see that closer to 2.5, maybe even 3 miles per hour. That's sort of your healthy range.
And where's the red flag? At what point do doctors start to get concerned?
The clinical threshold that gets everyone's attention is when speed drops below roughly 1.5 miles per hour.
1.5. And what happens there?
That number is just incredibly well documented. Once you cross that threshold, you see a really significant increase in the risk for hospitalization, for falls, cognitive decline, and even mortality.
This is where the research gets. Honestly, it's a little arresting. The link between slowing down and mortality is so clear, and it's not just about getting older.
No, it's independent of that. The studies are very clear. For every 0.1 meter per second decrease in your gait speed, your risk of death increases measurably.
0.1 meters per second. That sounds so small. What does that actually look like in the real world?
Okay, so think about crossing a normal street. That small decrease means it now takes you maybe 2 or 3 seconds longer to cross that street than it did last year. It's an almost imperceptible change.
Wow.
But that tiny margin signals a meaningful drop in your underlying health. And the data shows this holds true even after you account for age, sex, or chronic diseases the person might already have.
So if you have two 70-year-olds, both with the same health conditions, the one who walks just a little bit slower, they have a statistically higher risk.
That's right. And that's why this has moved from just an observation to a really critical decision-making tool in medicine.
Let's talk about that. How are doctors actually using this day to day? Let's start with cardiology.
In cardiology, it's huge, especially before a major surgery, like a valve replacement. They use gait speed to assess what's called a patient's functional reserve.
Functional reserve. So how much they have left in the tank to handle the stress of surgery.
Exactly. The faster you walk, the more reserve you have. A slower speed predicts a higher rate of complications, longer hospital stays. It's a powerful predictor.
Is it just used to predict bad outcomes?
No, and that's the important part. If a patient's speed is low, it's a trigger. It directs them towards something called prehabilitation.
Prehab. So getting them stronger before the surgery.
Precisely. Targeted conditioning to improve their strength, their endurance, and yes, their gait speed, to give them the best possible shot at a good recovery.
That's fantastic. What about in, say, pulmonology? I've heard of the 6-minute walk test.
The 6-minute walk test is a classic. It's a standardized measure of how far you can walk in 6 minutes. So it's not just speed, it's also endurance. For people with heart failure or chronic lung disease, that distance is one of the best predictors of long-term survival.
And I was surprised to see it used in oncology. For cancer patients, why would their walking speed affect their chemo?
Well, for older adults with cancer, it's becoming a key part of the assessment. The question isn't just, can we treat the tumor? It's, can the person tolerate the treatment?
I see.
Chemotherapy is a massive physiological stress. In that context, gait speed acts as a direct proxy for resilience. A slow speed might signal that the body is too frail to handle an aggressive chemo regimen, so the oncologist might adjust the dose or the intensity based on that person's ability to walk across the room.
It's turning a one-size-fits-all treatment into something tailored to the person's actual strength.
Exactly. And in primary care, it predicts everything: falls, loss of independence, needing to move into a nursing home. And sometimes it tells you more than an MRI. The MRI shows you the structure, the arthritic knee. Gait speed shows you the function, how the whole body is or isn't compensating for that knee.
That makes so much sense. Okay, let's pivot for a second. Because this metric doesn't just show up in the clinic, it actually shapes the world around us.
It really does, in ways you'd never expect. Take a street corner.
A street corner.
Traffic engineers use assumed walking speeds to decide how long the little walk sign stays on. Historically, most of those signals were timed for someone walking at a pretty brisk pace, maybe 2.5 to 3 miles per hour.
Oh, I've seen this. You see an older person start to cross, and suddenly the hand starts flashing and they have to rush. It's stressful just to watch.
It is, and it's a design flaw. If the average speed is 1.9 and the risk threshold is 1.5, timing the light for 3 miles an hour literally designs a huge part of the population out of public space.
Right.
It forces them to hurry, which increases the risk of a fall.
We're building a world for an idealized, younger body.
We are. And it's the same in architecture. The slope of a ramp, how far apart benches are in a park or a long corridor, all of that is often calibrated to a faster, idealized pace.
Okay, let's connect this back to a word we've used a few times: frailty. How does gait speed relate directly to that?
Clinically, frailty isn't just about being weak. It's defined as having a reduced physiological reserve.
The ability to bounce back from stress.
Right, from a cold, from a surgery, from a fall. And gait speed is probably the best single measure of that reserve we have. When walking slows down, it's a sign that reserve is shrinking. It's the impaired balance, the slower reaction time. The slowdown comes before the fall.
It's an early warning, not a late-stage marker.
Exactly. Which is why how we measure it has become so important.
So how did they used to do it?
Historically, a stopwatch and a hallway. Super simple. But it had a big flaw: the performance effect.
The performance effect.
People knew they were being tested. So they'd try harder, they'd walk faster than they normally do in their day-to-day life. It gave you a snapshot of their best effort, not their typical function.
And that's where wearables come in.
That's the game changer. Your smartwatch, even your phone, they can capture your walking patterns continuously in the real world. When you're tired, when you're carrying groceries, it gives you a long-term trend of how you actually move. It's a much more honest picture.
Which is crucial. And this brings us to the most optimistic part of this whole conversation. The sources were clear. This is trainable. You can change this.
Oh, absolutely. It can change for the better.
So if I want to improve my speed, should I be focusing on taking these huge lunging steps?
No, that's actually not the most effective way. For most people, the key is to focus on cadence.
Cadence. So the number of steps you take per minute. The rhythm.
Exactly. Your speed is just your step length multiplied by your cadence. And it's often much easier and safer to adjust the rhythm, your cadence, than it is to try and force a longer stride, which can strain your muscles and joints.
So just a slightly quicker rhythm.
A slightly quicker, more consistent rhythm. The goal isn't to be walking at a breakneck pace all day. It's about building more confident, more efficient, more stable movement habits. And that consistency is what rebuilds that muscle power, that balance, and that all-important functional reserve.
This has been amazing. So what it really comes down to is that gait speed reflects your functional age much more than your chronological age.
That's the core insight. It's not about comparing yourself to a 20-year-old. It's about how your own personal baseline is changing over time.
Right. Is it stable? Is it improving? Or is it trending down?
And that trend influences everything, your independence, your safety, even your medical care. There's a fundamental story about how you move through the world.
So, considering that link to mortality and its huge impact on our safety and our resilience, here's the final question for you to think about. Should tracking your personal gait speed trend be treated with the same seriousness as tracking your blood pressure? What is your functional age telling you right now?